Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back in the update 1.83 dev server, and what we're going to be having a look at is the Royal Navy. Now this is the new set of ships, or the new line of ships, or the new nation of ships, which is going to be added to the game in update 1.83. Remember that they are going to come out in a CBT mode, and you will have to purchase one of the packs in order to be able to play the naval part in CBT of the Royal Navy. So what I'm going to do is we're going to have an overlook of them, and then we're going to have a look at specific machines such as the Fairmile and the Hyder, which are the two machines that you can get in a pack. So first of all, let's start off with the reserve, the MTB-1 series. Now this machine was actually in the game in update 1.81 on the dev server, but it wasn't when it came to live server. As you can see, not much has changed on it. It just has two sets of quad Lewis Vickers machine guns. It looks a little bit more polished now, and it's also got some racks at the back, which look very swanky. These are basically for the torpedoes, and as you can see, the torpedoes and the depth charges that it gets, very, very standard. The thing that this MTB-1 will do well is the fact that the majority of machines that we have in War Thunder do not have a lot of armor at rank 1 battle rating 1.0. So even though it may be one of the slowest out there, it is one of the ones which does have a decent amount of firepower. So I am personally looking very much forward to that. Survivability though, with only 12 crew, it's not the best, but once again very similar to the other reserves that we have from other nations. The Vosper I series is the first motor torpedo boat after the MTB-1 series, and what you get out of it is a little bit more speed, a little less guns, and a little bit of a smaller silhouette, so going after it should be a little bit harder. 10 crew, so once again survivability is definitely an issue on it. You don't have secondary weapons, so no depth charges or anything like that. Well, I suppose you do have secondary weapons in the form of torpedoes, but you don't have tertiary ones. And then, of course, you have, the Lewis machine guns 1916, which are set in two pods here. The Americans get 50 cals, we get Lewis machine guns. That's basically how this is working. The actual belts, you start off with Omnipurpose, and then you can either get the AP belts or you can get yourself the API belts. Now the API belt is ITAP, and what this basically means is it should be able to cause a lot of fires, but it doesn't have a lot of penetration, especially the IT belts. We all know with the French guns in the planes, if you just use air targets where you just have IT, it doesn't really do a lot. I wonder if that will actually go over to ships in a large way or not, or it's just going to be a scenario where the Lewis machine guns are going up against a lot more stuff which has no armor, so going through everything shouldn't be too much of an issue. You have the bridge here, the torpedo tubes. These are Mark 8 torpedoes, and what that means is, if we can just have a look, the torpedoes themselves, they have 84 kilometers an hour in water, which is pretty good actually. The aiming distance 35 meters, depth stroke 1 meter, and explosive mass of 327.5 kilos. It has the tri-engine idea that a lot of the other PT boats have, and the speed seems okay. Once again, a little bit slower than some of the other nations. Then we have the Vosper II series. Now we're getting into the chunky monkeys. You can see how much of this is actually out of the water, making it feel much more hydrofoily, but it isn't, actually. It's just a machine which is very, very high above the water. A 20mm Oerlikon on the front, 12.7 Vickers on the back, and then of course the Mark 8 torpedoes again. Even though this may be chunky, this is much more reminiscent of the silhouette that you would get from an American PT boat. Maybe the front of it is a little bit larger, but overall it looks very similar. What I really like about this vehicle is the fact that it has the flag. The flag center stage looks absolutely beautiful, and with 12 crew it has a bit more survivability at 1.7. For me, these are the fun machines of ships, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. It has the Tri-Series engines once again, very similar speed to the one before. The next machine is the motor gunboat. So remember how the tech tree works in ships. You can either go down or you can go across. So if you don't want to unlock these two, but you want to get to rank 2, you can just get the Fairmile and maybe some of the other gunboats. So this is the line of the gunboats, this is the line of the torpedo boats in rank 1. As you can see, there's not a lot of torpedo boats, but when it comes to gunboats, well, we have absolutely no shortage of them. This is the Fairmile A, ML100. Its battle rating 1.7, and it has two 7.72mm Lewis machine guns once again, and then it has a 3-pounder Hotchkiss on the back. So at 1.7, that a Hotchkiss gun, even though it looks like it's going to struggle to fire straight if they model in these barriers correctly, it is a machine which should do a decent amount of damage. It is absolutely huge though, and it only has 14 crew. Once again, very, very large silhouette. It has its own inbuilt radio station, for God's sake. And when it comes down to it, you're just basically gonna hope that this 3-pounder does a lot of work. Otherwise, you're gonna be in a situation where you're not really going to be able to do a lot. And the 3-pounder only has HE to it. So what this basically means is if it hits a machine which doesn't have a lot of armor, it'll do a lot of damage. If there is any armor on the machine at all, then the 3-pounder may not do as much damage, and therefore your main weapon is completely useless. It does get access to 12 depth charges though, which is kind of nice. I think at this point, when I look at this machine, I feel like there just isn't enough guns on it to make it a gunboat. It looks much more of just a observation vehicle with a few guns strapped to it or something like that. But it is really, really lovely modelled. It's just very large for not very a big use, I think is the way to put it. Overall, I would put this on the lower echelon of stuff which to me looks to be competitive, I think is the way to go. And yeah, let's have a look at some other gunboats. We have the MGB-61. This is the motor gunboat. Obviously MGB standing for motor gunboats. Now this is a smaller gunboat than the one we saw before. It is faster. It has nearly the same amount of crew. It doesn't have a radio station, and it has more armament at 1.7. There's literally no reason to take the other one over this unless you do not have this one researched. So we have the 40mm 2-pounder Rolls-Royce semi-automatic cannon back here. Then we have some Vickers Mark V machine guns, dual ones, looking forward. This, to me, looks very much how a PT boat looks, apart from the fact that they're missing the PT boat. It actually does have a radio station, never mind. It does. It is one engine down, though, compared to a lot of its competitors, but that doesn't really matter if it's pumping out the same amount of energy and is able to compensate for that fact. The engines do look slightly larger, but just understand that if one engine gets knocked out, then you're going to lose a lot more momentum than you would if you had two engines in the other system. So the 40mm gets HE and AP. I would suggest AP is the way to go. It also has access to some depth charges. The 12.7mm, you also have the I, and then the API. Once again, both these rounds are not very good. You know, you can either get a bunch of tracer rounds, or you can get a bunch of incendiary bullet rounds. It's not looking great in that respect. I would personally definitely say either sticking with the Universal or going for the API, but the main one is going to be the 40mm, so taking AP on it seems to be a good thing to do. I just want to show you the 40mm Rolls-Royce and how it actually works, so we're just going to control it here. Let's just turn these guys off. So it fires in 4-round bursts. The reload between them is not too bad, and remember, this crew is literally stock, and we're in realistic, we're already up to 63 kilometers an hour. This is quite a fast machine, but the front of the boat, as you can see, is once again very high, compared to a lot of the machines that you will be used to from other nations. So that is something that you will definitely have to get used to with the British ships. The fact that the front of them will be incredibly high out of the water, meaning that your silhouette will be a lot larger. But overall, the 4 Vickers guns and the 2-pounder, the 2-pounder from the Rolls-Royce on the back, I think makes a great combination, even though that clip of 4 is not very long. Moving on, we have the Darkglass FPB 1101. This is the first machine which has what we would class a donk cannon, the 114mm QF Mark 1. This gun which is mounted on the front here. You can see it in all of its glory. It even has the ammunition here and everything like that. And on the back, it also has access to a long-barreled 40mm Bofors. So overall, this thing is good enough when we say firepower-wise. Firepower-wise at 2.0, 1 Bofors is pretty much enough. It's enough to be able to do a lot of damage. The 114mm, it only gets a HE, but it gets 30mm of penetration. That thing should be able to donk on enemies pretty well. The reload on it is okay. The muzzle velocity is 457 meters per second. It does get access to depth charges, which is nice, just like a lot of these ships. But mainly, once again, what you're looking at is another fat ship. This thing is huge compared to some of its competitors at 2.0. And because of that, it's going to be a much, much easier target. But the 40mm and the 114 are 2 great additions and will be a lot of fun to use. Maybe this thing's limited a little bit when it comes to dealing with aircraft, but overall I think it will be a lot of fun. The Thermal B ML345, another 2.0 rank 1 vehicle. Now this is looking a little bit more gunboaty. And what we have here is a 3-pounder Hotchkiss, we have a 20mm Oerlikon dual mount, we have a 20mm Oerlikon, and then we have some dual-mounted Lewis machine guns. So the Oerlikons, which are dual-mounted, are sat on the back of the machine right here. Then you have an Oerlikon in the center, then you have the 3-pounder on the front, and then the Lewis machine guns are in the center. So you have a bit of everything, bish bash bosh. You have some Oerlikons, there's some secondaries, the 3-pounder of course to put holes in things, and then the Lewis machine guns, the 1916s, to be able to try and go after people. Once again, the crew of 18, not very high, but at 2.0 it shouldn't be too much of an issue. The 47 does only have access to HE once again, HE and AP for the 20mm, 7.7 is a default. Overall, it's looking good. It also has access to the first bomb mortar that we've seen out of the British, and that is why it has all of these different, depth charge modifications. If you don't know what the bomb mortar is, it's something that is put on the side of ships, and you fling off stuff like depth charges with very much a lot of ferocity. I will show it in a little bit. But overall, this looks like a really good pickup compared to the other 2.0s. It's got a lot of guns on it. Its speed is not the best. It's quite slow, so you're going to have to fight your ways out of situations. And there is a little bit of armor on it, but to me, it doesn't really matter. People are going to shoot you here. The main thing to take away from this is you're going to have to shoot first, which is completely fine. And then we move on to the Isle class, the HMT Liscomb, which is a very interesting name. This is the T285, and this is a real chunky monkey. This to me looks like a ferry, if anything, a ferry that they've just added guns to. And the guns that they've added are quite large. The 4-inch QF Mark V, then we have 3 20mm Oerlikon Mark IIs, and then 2, once again, dual 7.7mm Lewis machine guns. As you can see, all of the guns, or at least a lot of the guns, are focused on the front of the machine. You have the Lewis machine guns here on the side of the bridge. Then you have the 20mm looking forward. Then you have the big 4-inch. So if you are trying to attack somebody, it is normally a good idea in this to try and keep it straight. Instead of a lot of machines which have guns on the back where you're going to have to fishtail a little bit, for this, it seems like it's much better just to keep guns on target and hope that if they pen you front, they don't hit that ammo storage right there. The only armor on this machine is for the 20mm Oerlikons, and the crew is 40, so it has a hell of a lot more survivability than a lot of other machines. Now, if we have a look at the depth charges, this thing does get 20 depth charges. And I actually just want to show you what they look like, because they look really interesting on this machine. So I'll just gold some stuff for you. Something to note is that the 102mm, which is the 4-incher, it does get access to some very cool shells. It also gets some shrapnel protection, of all things. But yeah, it actually gets a shrapnel round out of its main gun, which is really cool. So there we go. This is what the depth charges look like on the back. There's a hell of a lot of them. There's even 2 stages of them. But yeah, having a main gun have a HE round, an AP round, and a shrapnel round, especially an AP round which pens 225, this gives the main gun a lot of flexibility and makes me kind of looking forward to being able to use this vehicle. I'm much looking forward to which round is going to be the best. Instead of being limited to one type of round, I now get to experiment, and I find that really interesting. For me, I have a feeling that the shrapnel round, it may have a bit more of a use than some of the others, just because it's able to kill a lot of crew. But generally in situations like this at 2.3, I'm either looking for a lot of damage, so I'm looking at HE if I'm down tiered, and if I'm up tiered, I have the option of AP to be able to put some quite large holes in things. The next one is the Flower class, the K218, and as you can see, this looks much more like an actual ship. We're going from boats and we're getting to ships. This to me looks like the first one, which looks kind of like a ship. Has 102mm on it, on the front that you can see here. It has 40mm 2-pounders, and then it has 2 20mm Oerlikons. So the 40mm, the auxiliary caliber, is on the back here. Then you have the main caliber 102 here. And then if you want to find the Oerlikons, once again, they're near the bridge. One here, and then one here. The engines on this thing are absolutely huge. And what this means is that the center of the ship is absolutely massive as well. And this machine can only go 25.4 kilometers an hour, even though it's got these huge engines in it. I don't know what is going on with this. Also, you have the transmission. Look how big the damn transmission is. When we talk about silhouettes and what is going to be able to be hit, well, the Flower class is definitely a beefy boy. It's going to be able to get mashed by many shots to the engines here, and also the transmission. I feel like if you are playing the Flower class, you're going to be in a situation where you are going to have to be repairing constantly. It does have 85 crew though, so survivability there is quite high. Unfortunately, they are mostly in the same area. But the girth on this ship is just kind of impressive, especially since it's called the Flower class. But yeah, you can see how large this thing is for a 2.3. 25 kilometers an hour does not give you really any hope that this thing will have much use in the battlefield. Generally, at this point, you are going up against a lot of people which are quite nippy. They're quite fast around the place, and this is not going to be. So my feeling is that even though it does have quite strong armament in the 40mm and the 102 on the front, what you're going to get is a lot of torpedo boats which are just going to... Let's just do that. You're going to get a lot of torpedo boats which are just going to run... Okay then. Just going to run rings around you. And even though it looks absolutely beautiful, it's a nice, beautiful machine, it's not something that you're going to be able to hold up in a lot. So for me, this is torpedo bait, if anything. But it should be quite fun to use. See it as a tank of the of the British tree. The next one we have is the Dark class. Now this is the Darkglass Aggressor. This is Let's just see, do they label it as one? Yeah, so this starts off the rank 2 of the motor torpedo boats, the MTBs, and it's a rank 2 battle rating 2.3. You can see that it's very much compact. It has 4 torpedoes on the front of it, and it also has a Bofors Mark 1. Now at 2.3, that for a quite quick, nippy boat with a max speed of 64 kilometers an hour, I'm actually quite pleased with. With this small boat, it has the best, gun pound for pound that I found in naval forces, which is the Bofors, and then also has some torpedoes with it, so that's good to see. The 40mm does have HE and AP, also gets access to 2 depth charges, which obviously will be at the back here. But I think this is a solid pick in your 2.3 lineup. I mean, you can already see that there is there is potential for a good 2.0. So the Fairmile, the Darkglass, right here, and then if you add in the Darkglass FPV and put in the Isle class, you can see that there is workings of a nice lineup here. The Fairmile D617, this is another motor torpedo boat. It's slightly longer, and it has actually ditched 2 of the torpedoes in favor of more guns. So this will be much more to the favor of a lot of people. Think about the 81-foot Nasty, and how you get this big change from torpedo boats which are just torpedo boats to boats which have a lot of guns on them, and that's basically what the D617 is. It has the 57mm 6-pounder on the front. It has 2 dual 20mm, and then it also has 2 dual Vickers sets of guns, and on top of that, it also has 2 dual 12.7 Vickers guns. So it has 2 dual 7.7s and 2 dual 12.7s. You have the 7.7s here, and then the 12.7s looking at the front. It's some really cool little turrets. Then you have the 20mm Oerlikons on the back, and then you've got the 57mm on the front. It is a good combination. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and for me, that makes it interesting. It is 2.7 though, so you are going to start coming up against quite a lot of big bruisers, and with 30 crew, especially in this quite small, compact area, might be quite easy to take out. It does have the 3-engine system though, as you see here, and I just want to show you the test sail, just because the 57mm once again has HE, so it may be worth just trying to use the Oerlikon. And